Adjourned.
It has been said that of all the stories in the world, of all the novels written, of all the world's vast storehouse of literature, the biblical story of Joseph is the best story ever written. It's certainly full of adventure, like Lord of the Rings. It's got plenty of intrigue, like Doctor Who. It's full of twists and turns, like The Count of Monte Cristo. And suffering is rewarded, like in Dickens' Great Expectations. More is written on the life of Joseph than any of the other patriarchs. There has long been confusion on whether Messiah would be Ben Yosef, the suffering servant, or Ben David, the conquering king. He's both, of course, but the story which goes with my portion of scripture this morning highlights the side of Messiah, which is Ben Yosef. Joseph's life was wrapped up in dreams. His descent into Egypt followed a dream. His release from prison was because of a dream. And his ascent to the throne was because of a dream. Actually, all of these things happened because Joseph could interpret dreams, and this was a gift from God. Joseph was 17, just 4 months younger than I, when he was blessed by God with the ability to interpret dreams. In one of his dreams, while he was working in the fields binding sheaves with his brothers, he saw his sheaf rise up, and his brother's sheaves surrounded his and bowed down to it. Joseph told his brothers his dream, which didn't go over well at all. And even they could easily interpret its meaning. What? Do you actually think that you will rule over us? Then, sometime later, Yahweh showed him another dream, where the sun and moon and 11 stars bowed down to him. This dream meant that not only would his brothers bow down to him, but so would his mother and father. It was probably not a good idea to share this in front of his brothers, who had now hated him even more than they originally did. And Jacob didn't seem too pleased either. Joseph was his father's favorite, which made his brothers even crosser. But how cool would it have been to be told by God himself through a vivid dream that he has big plans for you? And that's not all. When he was in Egypt, Potiphar's wife praised his looks, and it even said that his eyes dazzled everyone who saw him. Joseph, at 17, is certainly not ready for God's high calling of becoming second in command of what was to be the most powerful country on the face of the earth at that time. Yahweh had a plan for Joseph and knew that he would rise to the occasion where others would have fallen flat on their face from two of the greatest tools in Satan's shed to take someone: wealth and power. And if you add good looks, which can be considered the third most powerful tool in his shed, Joseph was destined to fail God unless he went through intensive training to resist anything Satan threw at him. And Joseph, being the younger of the two brothers, was given the tasks of caring for the family's flock of sheep. Assignments of greater responsibility probably fell onto the older brothers. Plus, Joseph had little to no experience running a household, let alone an entire country. And the angels in heaven were probably thinking, We know God has chosen this special, privileged boy for a very big job. But how is he going to mature Joseph into a humble and wise leader? One who obeys with a servant's heart, but is experienced enough to run the affairs of a whole country. But Yahuwah had a plan for Joseph, and he didn't waste any time getting started. Slide, please. Step one was easy, because the stage was already set. His brothers hated him. They wanted to kill him. But that wouldn't work in Yahuwah's plan. And in reality, they didn't have the heart to kill him. Because Joseph was still their brother. Instead, they put him in a pit where Joseph would eventually die. But if you look at the word pit in Hebrew, slide please, it's bor. Bet resh vav, which is the same word as dungeon. The Hebrew word pictures for bor tells us that this pit is a place where a man, resh, is nailed, vav, to the dwelling, bet. Could there be any better description of a dungeon? And for all we know, Joseph might have been the one who coined the expression, "My life is in the pits." And if that's the case, he would have been comforted by the words from a book I've read twice, The Hiding Place, which is about the Holocaust. No pit is so deep that he is not deeper still. After some deliberation, his brothers decided to sell Joseph to a passing group of Midianite merchants. Being sold as a slave is a sin against Torah. It says in Deuteronomy 24, verse 7, if someone is caught kidnapping a fellow Israelite and treating or selling them as a slave, the kidnapper must die. You must purge the evil from among you. Of course, they didn't have the book of Deuteronomy back then to refer to, but they knew what they did was wrong. Joseph was aghast that his own flesh and blood could treat him like that. Even more, he's thinking, how can God allow my brothers to sin so grievously against me? Joseph's tunic was a long-sleeved, colorful garment that went all the way to his feet, the kind that royalty would wear. Here at House of Covenant, we'd probably think of Joseph's tunic as a covenant tunic. All colors of the rainbow represent the covenants God has for us so that we can grow closer to him. But this tunic gets covered with the blood of a sacrificial animal to betray death. A bloody covenant tunic. It's like a perfect picture of how covenant works and how it covers us. The only way to the other colors, the other covenants, is through the blood. And also full of irony, like all good stories. And this story is a true one. And it's also history that was written by God, both in real life and through the hand of Moses. What happened next came in full circle back to Jacob. Jacob had deceived his father Isaac with a slaughtered goat and tunic, just as he was being deceived with a slaughtered goat and a tunic. God knows how to make his point. Ruse for ruse, swap for swap, tunic for tunic, and goat for goat. Judah also was tricked in the next chapter when he purchased a night with Tamar for a goat. A goat is tied in with deception in all three of these examples. Deception is another tool, is another most powerful tool in Satan's tool shed. But despite the failings of these men, God used it all to bring about a very good case. And to bring about good in every case. Only He can do that. In Revelation 19, Messiah returns on Feast of Trumpets, on a white horse with a sword, ready for the final battle. He's also wearing a tunic dipped in blood, like Joseph's. But this is not the blood of sacrificial goat. It's His own blood. He was the sacrifice. His blood covers our sins so that we may go through the covenants and grow closer to God. And it starts with the blood, with His sacrifice. The bloody tunic is a symbol of both death and salvation in Genesis, because the supposed death of Joseph brought about the salvation of his family, all of Israel. And it's still a symbol of death and salvation in Revelation. His death, which makes possible the salvation of all Israel and those grafted into Israel. And poor Joseph, he probably did what any 17-year-old would have done after being sold by his own brothers as a slave. He cried and cried as he was being taken far away from the land of Canaan, far from his home and far from his father. Needless to say, right from the start of Yahuwah's training program, Joseph must have been overwhelmed with discouragement and dread for his future. But this can be just the way God works. Humans never see it coming. Even the angels must have been watching intently to see what Yahuwah would do next. Because, honestly, they had the same question Joseph did. How is God going to raise a slave into high places? Ironically, in wanting to destroy the destiny predicted by Joseph's dreams, the brothers actually set it in motion. It's great literature. It's the way God writes a story, and it's the way God uses a life. Slide, please. Joseph was sold in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of the great Pharaoh and the captain of the guard, who just so happened to be in need of a servant. Potiphar put Joseph in charge of overseeing all comings and goings in his house and all that belonged to him. Fortunately for Joseph, with Yahuwah's blessing, he learned how to manage the things Potiphar placed before him. Soon, Joseph was beginning to run all the affairs of the household, from servants to finances, solving problems to handling emergencies. Joseph was learning to lead people and make important decisions every day. Finally, everything seemed to be going smoothly, or that's what he thought. Joseph now had a Torah test for Joseph, and it was called temptation. Potiphar's wife became very attracted to the handsome young slave and tried to entice Joseph. Continually, he said, "No, how could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And as it says in 1 Corinthians 6:18, immorality. Every sin that a man does is outside the body, but he who commits sexual immorality sins against his own body. And with some temptations, the Bible tells us to stand firm. But with this temptation, the Bible tells us to flee. And that's exactly what Joseph did. He fled from Potiphar's wife so fast that she ripped his garment right off of him and used it as evidence against him. This is the second time Joseph's coat had been stripped from him and used for deception. Joseph passed the temptation test with flying colors, as beautiful as the tunic he lost to his brothers. Joseph was a young man with integrity through and through. He knew right from wrong, and in the face of temptation, he did not forget God's laws that his father had taught him while growing up. And so, okay, he gets a reward, a blessing? No, wrong. He gets to move on to step 3 in God's training program. Slide, please. So here we are to step 3, and an innocent Joseph is wrongly accused and thrown into prison. One would think that this is a big mistake on God's part. It might be huge, but there's no logical reason for this unjust punishment. There's no good that can come from this. Joseph has been forsaken, overlooked, and forgotten. What in the world is God thinking? Satan, who didn't want God's anointed to succeed, threw Joseph a curveball. He fired up Potiphar's wife to commit 2 sins. Not 1, but 2 sins in rapid succession, which ended up unjustly sending Joseph to the dungeon, where there was no light of day. Why would God allow this? Joseph had been managing an entire household and doing it very well, but that did not make him ready to manage a whole country. But that which Satan meant for harm with Potiphar's wife, the Lord turned for good, like he did with the other stories. Despite the dark and gloomy dungeon, we are told that God is still with Joseph. Genesis 39 says, God showed kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. The warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. Apparently, Yahweh chose to allow Satan to have his way with Joseph, and he let him be thrown into prison because moving Joseph into the new venue, bigger than a household, but yet smaller than a country, was the next step in Joseph's training. God had decided Joseph was ready to increase the number of people dependent upon him. He wanted to challenge Joseph with new problems and new situations and many new personalities, tough, hardened men, and some close to death, and most without any form of hope. God sent Joseph to give those men hope. One of the hard lessons God was teaching Joseph was to recognize evil men bent on doing harm, so that as a ruler, he could make the country safe. And it says Joseph did an excellent job at doing just that. Genesis 39 says, 39. The warden paid paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care, because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him succession in whatever he did. So, though Joseph could have thought of his prison time as a job promotion, I doubt he did. In fact, years in a foreign prison would have gotten Joseph a lot of time to think and reflect. At first, he was probably very angry and bitter, but still, he took care of his work. Even in serving smelly, dirty, lowly prisoners. Matthew 23:11 through 12 says, "The greatest among you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." The once privileged Joseph was now a servant to the lowest of the low. He knew his place. He was powerless to change his circumstances. But I bet, though, his training, he had become grateful for the little things and content with his circumstances. As Paul said in Philippians 4, "I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstance. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want." And I believe that Joseph had Paul's attitude too. Surely, he had let go of the dream he had 11 years prior. It was his only light, his only hope for the outside. It has now been 2 years that he's languished in prison, and God hadn't taken any of the advice Joseph tried to offer on how to get him out of prison and make his dream happen. But I think God was making sure that he got out at just the right time, because God had Joseph's life all planned out for him. And finally, during his morning rounds, Joseph notices the dejected expressions on Pharaoh's ex-baker and ex-cupbearer. We didn't know why they were in prison, but Jewish tradition has it that the cupbearer served Pharaoh a cup of wine in which a fly was floating in. I don't know about you, but I'd throw the cupbearer in prison too. That's just nasty. And the baker served a pastry which accidentally contained a small stone. In Genesis 40, Joseph asks, "Why are your faces so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there's no one to interpret them." Joseph was now barely sure he interpreted his own dream right after being in prison for a crime he never committed. But our humble Joseph found himself saying, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer told him how he saw a vine with 3 branches which budded, blossomed, and ripened into grapes. Taking the grapes, he squeezed them, and wine flowed from Pharaoh's cup into Pharaoh's cup. Joseph probably felt the anointing of God on his lips as he gave the cupbearer the good news that he would be restored in 3 days as Pharaoh's cupbearer again. When all goes well with you, remember to tell Pharaoh about me and get me out of this prison. That statement was the closest Joseph could have come. Joseph came to complaining about what had happened to him. Joseph is one of the Bible's rare characters about which nothing bad is said. Our Master, God, asked us to remember him in the cup and the bread, just as Joseph asked the cupbearer. Hopefully, we're doing better than the cupbearer. The word cup is mentioned in passage 4 times. Another reference to the Passover Seder, in which the 4 cups of covenant are drunk when our groom is wooing us. Liking what he heard, the chief baker was anxious for his turn with Joseph. In my dream, I had 3 baskets of bread on my head. As much as I had tried, I couldn't stop the birds from attacking and eating the bread before I could deliver it to Pharaoh. Then Joseph exulted. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a tree, and then the birds will eat away your flesh. That's really weird interpretation. Joseph probably didn't like what came out of his mouth, but lo and behold, his words proved right. There's some interesting symbolism in these dreams. Bread and wine are the traditional meal when a covenant is being established. Yeshua, God, shared this covenant meal with his disciples, but at the Last Supper before his crucifixion. The wine in his cup represents his blood, the very blood that purchased our salvation. The blood was his body with the baker too, hanging on a tree. The flesh dies, just as the baker died. But the life which is in the blood lives, just as the cupbearer had lived. And there's no coincidence that their fates occurred in 3 days, just as Yeshua suffered his fate and was resurrected in 3 days. All Joseph's dreams, thoughts, and hopes were now reawakened. He was probably thinking, finally, all's well. It won't be long now. Surely God is about to make the dreams he gave me come true. Joseph was most likely ready to move on as far as his lessons in life. But that's not the only factor that determines when we are launched. In other words, if you are a fast learner, God doesn't necessarily make his plans happen sooner than a slower learner. It's not about us. There is an appointed date, a predetermined moment in time that Yahuwah has deliberately chosen for his big plans to unfold. Usually, God's appointed time takes longer than we think it should. He had far bigger plans for Joseph than Joseph had ever imagined. But the perfect time for Joseph required 2 more years of waiting on the Lord. God had established his trigger. The cupbearer was now in place to be used when the time was right. But God had more tweaking to do before the stage was set for Joseph's grand debut. So he waited, first with a skip in his step as he did his morning rounds. But soon his eager expectations began to fade as days turned into months and months became years. And then the call came. On the day nobody could have predicted, God called for Joseph. Can you imagine God's excitement when he could finally rescue Joseph? Isaiah 45, verse 2. He had gone before him and leveled the mountains. He had broken down gates of bronze and he had cut through bars of iron. On a single perfect day, Pharaoh was primed and ready. The sages believe that the Pharaoh's dreams happened on the evening of Feast of Trumpets. and that Joseph interpreted the dreams on the day of Feast of Trumpets. They believe this because, slide please, God judges the world for crop yields and income during the year to come on Feast of Trumpets. Feast of Trumpets is a day of remembering sins, repenting, and confessing. The cupbearer remembers, repents, and confesses his sin and his broken promise to Joseph. And lastly, tradition celebrates coronation on Feast of Trumpets. Pharaoh crowns Joseph as ruler over Egypt, only second to Pharaoh. Pharaoh's wise men and magicians had failed him. To their rescue came the cupbearer, who remembered Joseph and informed Pharaoh of a young Hebrew in prison who had correctly interpreted his dream and that of the chief baker. Joseph had become the polished arrow of Isaiah 49, verse 2, that had been concealed in the quiver of Yahweh for many long years. So Joseph quickly cleaned up and was brought before Pharaoh. From Genesis 41, Pharaoh said to Joseph, "No one can interpret my dream, but I've heard it said that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." As always, Joseph defers the honor of God. "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." After Pharaoh relayed his dreams, Joseph replied, "No one. The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. The 7 good cows and good heads of grain are 7 years of abundance. The 7 lean, ugly cows and the worthless heads of grain are 7 years of famine." You see, God is showing Pharaoh what he's about to do. All the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and famine will ravage the land. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter had been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. So Pharaoh received one message, which was delivered twice in emphasis. The dreams of both livestock and crops showed that both major elements of food supply were going to be affected by what is coming. But in his grace and mercy, God prepared a humble servant to warn Pharaoh ahead of time and how to prepare for the coming disaster, which was the famine. The cattle and the grain of Egypt both depended on the annual flooding of the Nile. A wind out of the east would bring dry, hot, scorching air from the Arabian deserts, causing drought and disaster for both Egypt and Canaan. The 7-year cycles indicate completion and are the regular cycle of time that the sabbatical year being every 7th year, 7 cycles of 7 years, ending on a jubilee, the final 7 years talked about by the prophet Daniel, and in so much that we've been studying in Revelation. The dreams came with not only a prediction, but also a plan for survival. The abundance of the first 7 years would feed the leanness of the next 7 years. Pharaoh understood the proposal, recognized the wisdom, and gave Joseph the position of viceroy over Egypt. It was a miracle. Pharaoh correctly noted, "Can we find a man like this in whom is the Ruach Elohim, the Holy Spirit?" Joseph knew he had suffered long and hard, but now he could see God's hand in it all. Turns out he wasn't forsaken or overlooked. or forgotten. From Torah, Deuteronomy 31:8. God himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid and do not be discouraged. And that's all I want to take away from my study of the life of this incredible man of God. As a daughter of the commandment, I want to honor God with courage, even though I may not understand the path he has me on, to believe with all my heart that he has a plan for my life, just as he did for Joseph, and to never forget that he is always with me. Thank you.
Please now.
Let you sit here. And we'll end the service with this. I'm actually going to ask her family, Taryn's family, to come up and just give some words of encouragement or some special memories. Papa? Sister? Brother? Mom's cooking? Okay. Microphone. Right up there. There you go.
I remember when we were born, being 20 years old, not having the first clue what to do. Trying to figure out how to provide, realizing that I'm now responsible to be a man that you're supposed to look to. And I have watched you grow from the tiniest of infants to the young lady you are now. You make me more proud than I can ever express. I've watched you grow and advance. I've watched you fall, watched you fail. But I've always watched you pick yourself up again. And I don't know where you're going to go in life, but I do know you're going to bring honor to the family.
When we were little, we would fight like dogs and kind of hated each other for minutes at a time, not weeks. But we have always been the best of friends, no matter how much we break each other's stuff and use each other's clothes without asking. And I think I still have one of your shirts that you haven't asked back for yet, so I'm kind of keeping it. Probably. And it's amazing to see you get up and do this. And I know that you're trying to go to the military in the fall, and I don't want you to go because it means I don't get to call you, don't get to talk to you every day. But you might get letters every day, so. And you're a dork. You're such a nerd. Whatever. And it is absolutely amazing to see you do this, and you did so well, and you didn't have all that much time to prepare, but you did amazing, and I am so proud of you, and you have to help me or I'm going to fail. I love you.
I do remember
remember when you read me Harry Potter like 3 times one year. And it was really cool. I remember when I watched Doctor Who and you and I cried through when Rose left, sadly. I still cry about that, and so do you. But I love you with all my heart and all my soul, and I'm going to cry if you go into the military.
I just want to provide an opportunity for the congregation, my friends, to just say some encouraging words for her. We're going to pass this around. Is there anyone? Come on, there you go.
I just want to say I really appreciate you having you in dance all these years, and your dedication and your love and the calling you have walked in, because dance is a wonderful platform. It brings a lot of joy. And I hope you always keep that in your heart. Even when things get really bad, you can still dance to the Lord. You can just pull that deep down out of your soul. And I just thank you. You've been a real blessing to me and the dance team, and I hope I continue to see you more.
Anyone else?
I remember always so long ago, it was your 11th birthday. You came over and you were shy and quiet, and just watching you grow over the years to the beautiful young woman that you are now. And I believe in the bottom of my heart, whatever you put your mind to, that you will accomplish it. Love you, sweetie.
I love looking at your smile. And I just pray that you remember that when nothing seems to be going right, that smile is bringing a smile to God's face. And as He smiles down on you, the blessings will follow. So just keep His smile and His joy in your heart.
I wanted to mention, first of all, that wonderful dance, heartbeat dance, was choreographed for Taryn specifically by her loving sister, Lorna. And boy, I kept hearing from my girls how incredible this dance was. It was a difficult dance, and it was just choreographed with a lot of symbolism and a lot of meaning. So I really am glad that Lorna, your sister, honored you in that way by giving that special gift and using an ability we didn't know we had to do such wonderful choreography. I got to work with Taryn a little bit with her schooling, and I have enjoyed so much the time I've gotten to spend with her. She has a well-pleasing and pleasant personality. Anybody who knows her, she's calm, and she has a calming influence too on others. Your teaching especially meant a lot to me, and I thought it was delivered very well in your slides. And I am just so happy that you have made this commitment to the Lord, Taryn.
Anyone else? Hands are up. There we go.
Taryn. There are so many things that I could say about you, but most of them I'll keep under wraps. But you have definitely been one of my best friends over the years, and no matter how our paths went different ways, they always seem to cross again. And I appreciate all that you do and all your support, and I've loved doing dances with you and hanging out with you, doing movie marathons. And you're just an amazing person, and no matter where God leads you or what path you take, I hope that you always remember that you have a whole load of people behind you cheering you on.
Taryn, thank you for being such a great friend. You are like a sister to me. You have put up with me a lot in the past, like the time Lorna and I drew on your face while you were sleeping.
You made me.
Or
Unappealable pain.
Or the other time we drew on your face while you were sleeping. Or all of the other pranks we played on you while you were sleeping. Okay, the fact is, we were little rascals and you liked to sleep a lot. The two didn't mix well. I love the compliments you always give, but you can't fool me. I personally know how hard your punches are, even if your heart is soft. You're an amazing, sweet, tough, funny, persistent girl, and I love you.
Wow, really well. All right.
Taryn, I think that we should watch Doctor Who together and cry. I am so proud of you. I remember when your sister started dancing before you did, and you weren't too interested until you hurt your foot. And then you came up to me and said, I want my foot to heal quickly so I can come to dance. And it did, and you joined us, and we're so happy. So thank you for the joy that you bring to the dancer. Thank you for stepping up and honoring God with your life and your presence and your smile. You are a blessing to the dance circle, and we love you.
Well, Taryn, you've always been a very encouraging friend. Listening to all my invention designs, prank ideas, don't worry, I don't plan pulling any on you anyways. So, I know that you've been very encouraging, and occasionally, okay, last we guys. I love you, you're a great friend, thank you.
Taryn, I remember so well when we first started attending House of Covenant, this little 10-year-old girl, and I'm just sitting here just going through the years of just watching you grow, watching you blossom, and you are very precious to us, to all of us. And I will say, you and your sister are totally hanging the moon for my grandbabies. They adore you, and our little Virginia is the first one to make sure that I know which one's Taryn and which one's Lorna. I just wish you just the very best, and I'm so excited about the commitment you're making as you step into young womanhood. We'll be praying for you as you make decisions as to your future, and we know that God will lead you. We know that you will be holding His hand and He'll be holding yours in turn.
Darling girl, you were one of the first little girls that made friends with me when I first came here. You and your sister, of course your dad came over to help me with my stereo system, and he was so kind, and he brought you with him. And I loved your dance. Your dance was so beautiful, and all the girls that danced with you, I just loved them all. You were perfect together. I ask for blessings for you and your family.
Any others?
Karen, I really enjoyed your teaching, and I enjoyed the words you quoted about how I'm hoping you have it written and will refer to it. You said, we quoted a scripture, said he was going to go before you and send his messenger before you and continually make a way before you. And I was praying about, should I share that or not? And I opened up to that your God whom you serve immediately will himself deliver you. And those are wonderful promises, and I hope that they will be true and you'll have a chance to find them. Thanks.
Any others? Well, I just want to say what a privilege it's been to walk alongside Taryn as she prepared for this. And my encouragement to you is, it's not, we all follow the Torah portion that God assigns for us, and we're supposed to learn from that one specifically. And so my encouragement to you from this Torah portion is, no matter what life throws at you, no matter what the circumstances look on the outside, don't ever forget the story of Joseph, and that God is always orchestrating events. On the outside, when it looks bad, God is doing something marvelous on the inside. And so that's where your eyes need to focus throughout the rest of your life. Amen? Amen. Now with that, if I can have the family come up, and any others, I'm going to take the tallit and hold it overhead. I'm going to have you actually stand there. I'm going to combine the two of them. Okay, you're going to stand up, you're going to face it this way. I'm going to do the Aaronic blessing. So everybody please rise. Let's get guys to hold the tallit over. Let's go ahead and come to the sides, please. Go. Someday I'm going to take a shotgun to that thing. Exactly. All right. Do I need to do a test? Test? There we go. How we sound? Good. So if everybody could please join me at the kidney here and so. This actually. Yivorech Adonai v'yishmorecha. Ya'er Adonai panav alecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panav alecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance to you and grant you peace. So may it be his will. Amen. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.